Hello YouTube. Um, well, I'm just here to give my thoughts on the murder of Mr. Charlie Kirk. Um, where do you begin? I think there's so much noise, okay, and there's so much noise from all different directions, and I'm trying to play them all. I'm trying to understand all these different opinions, perspectives, and there's no conclusion yet, but anyway, I'm just using this audience to anyway, let me cut to the chase. What do I think of the man? Before the murder, I thought that Mr. Kirk was a baseline conservative with, normal kind of baseline conservative opinions, and I thought he was a kind of I really did appreciate him for that. I really did appreciate that there was someone standing against the tide of this onslaught, this kind of psychotic. I don't want to be mean, I'm not tribal. I don't want to say leftism, but it only seems to, or should I say, this particular brand of psychotism, whatever you want to call it. This particular brand of it only exists, or only seems to exist on the left. And it manifests in ideas such as a man can become a woman. Or it manifests in the idea that we should dismiss quality to make social change, or to instate people who belong to tribes that have been below, and to put them up, which is a good idea, of course, but not at the cost of quality. You should never want to risk quality in doing that. And for that reason, I always did appreciate him. I didn't know much about him. He looked quite boring. His face he's got that real kind of like milk toast kind of white guy looking demeanor, and I appreciated that, but I never really delved into him. He'd do little kind of low-hanging fruit kind of college debates, which were good. I'm not dissing them, but if you're in the know, or if you've got a slight increased level of consciousness, those aren't really going to enlighten you. Maybe a little, but really and truly, what they're doing, what those debates are doing, is just kind of showcasing hope. Really, that's what it was for to me. It was a showcase of hope. It wasn't necessarily teaching me that much, although I'm sure I've got a lot to learn. But look, upon his death, it really did break my heart. That's a bit much. It really did hurt when I discovered that he was dead. And I didn't really want to. I felt a shift, and I don't know if that was me projecting, but I did really feel a shift here in the UK, in London. It mattered to me, and it mattered to others. And it's been a week now, and it's got me questioning, because as far as I'm concerned, I can't reconcile certain parts of who he was. I don't think it's fair to necessarily say he's racist. And I think that the word racist is so kind of flexible. It's got a life of its own. So I don't think that's very useful a word in the first place. But I do think, and this is sinister. This is what it's sinister, but it's true. The word white supremacy has been changed. It's been molded into something that is different now. Usually, it used to mean someone who was outright racist, who more like a Nick Fuentes type. Someone, I don't know. Nick Fuentes ain't anyway. Before white supremacy, we know what that connotes. But the word's been reshuffled. It's been molded into something new, and essentially, I think that the redefinition is quite useful. I think it's accurate. The only problem is that it's not. Words have connotations, and certain people don't deserve necessarily the connotation that a word has, even though, if you're to be pedantic, they are that thing. And I would say, I think that Charlie Kirk kind of probably was a white supremacist. And that's not an evil thing necessarily. It just means that he was in it for his own, and his way of thinking was very white American centered. And that's a lot to think about, considering I mourned, I felt bad, for his death. And, in a small way I still do, of course. He's a Christian, I'm a Christian. And it hurts, but, and I'm still trying to digest it, but what would he have thought of people like me, deep in his heart, Now we all know there's like a politically correct way of even being conservative, of even being vested in your own people's interest when your people are Caucasian American. There's a very PC way of going about that. And in terms of what he said, I think he was justified. I think that to say maybe the stupid black women thing was wrong. I don't know what quote that is. If he's talking about moronic black women, I think that's a bit loaded. But in terms of there's so much that if you dig under the surface, if you assume the intent of his heart, if you assume his heart's intent, it's just seedy. It's just wrong. If you take him at his word, which is, I think that was kind of his whole shtick. A lot of these kind of conservative commentators, they're very cerebral, whereas the left are very heart-oriented. And I think with Mr. Kirk, along with so many other right-wing commentators, their whole kind of debate me or prove me wrong kind of trope is, what am I saying that is logically incorrect? But people don't think like that. They think below that. They think, what's motivating this guy to say that? And that's good. The only problem is that you can't take that to court. And also, when your politics are oriented by emotion, or when you kind of ignore other people's politics because of the emotion that you assume, legally speaking, politically speaking, it's about the print. It's about what's said. It's not about what's meant. It's about what's said. Legally speaking, if you're making laws, it's about what is written. So if I say anything, if I say I want to get a car, and you assume that means I want to kind of escape because I'm a prisoner and wow, a car would be bad or whatever, that's fine. That's intelligent of you, man. I might well want to escape. I'm a slave or I'm a prisoner. I want to get out of here, and a car would help me to do that. But me literally asking for a car is not me literally saying I'm running away. As much as it's in my right to run away, I shouldn't, I want to escape. But anyway, let me turn on the light. Anyway, I think that Charlie Kirk said some stuff that was factually reasonable. But from a human level, it seemed loaded. It seemed dirty, the water that he was providing, and yeah, it's tough. He was also seemingly towards the end of his life. He was a political. He was doing like a little shift on Israel, and hence we've got a lot of kind of speculation that maybe he was them people that did that, you know. But anyway, I don't know who he was, and in a very kind of formulaic way, he was not racist. In a formulaic way, as in, he seems like the kind of person who does appreciate black people if they fit a certain kind of ethno-white centric mold, and I think that deserves inquiry. I think that whole philosophy deserves inquiry in terms of what is good about that Eurocentric mold and what isn't, or what's unhealthy, because there's no doubt, in America at least, you know, I'd say in the West, you know, blackness has massive issues, you know, and so does whiteness, obviously, but we have tremendous, look, if you're unaliving each other at massive rates, you know, not to say it's like, look, if you're unaliving each other at massive rates, I'm not trying to play into any other person's hand right now, but I'm just saying, even for yourself as a people, that's bad, that's awful, you know. So anyway, what I'm saying is the guy had a lot of stuff in different directions, and I'm struggling where to put him, but he professed Christ and he spread the gospel, you know, presumably, you know, so yeah, I pray he's in heaven. I pray he's doing well. I pray, I should know, right, that he's covered by the blood. I should know. I suppose no one really knows, technically. I don't want to say anything bad, but yeah, man, I hope I can, look, as far as I know, if you're covered by the blood and you die, you know, even if you're not fully sanctified yet, you know, you'll be redeemed, like you'll be clean in heaven, you know, I'll see you in your pure state. So yeah, man, I hope that soul, as I hope every soul, will be in heaven. Even though that's not going to be the case, unfortunately. But I hope he's in heaven and I can suck with him. You know, I can eat with him, you know. Of course. But yeah, the guy was one of the few rocks against the stream of just like left-wing, liberal, modern kind of fanaticism. And it was refreshing. It wasn't that interesting because I'd heard it all before, but still, it's like, in my opinion, those are valuable. And it's a shame. But it's not a huge shame because he's in heaven, hopefully. And he's kind of woken a lot of people up to the current political state of things, you know. The normal state of affairs was going as long as he was alive, and now that he's gone, unfortunately, it's like everyone's waking up. Everyone's thinking all of a sudden about what this means, you know, including myself. And yeah, but yeah, it's sin. It's horrible that he died. It's wrong. What was the shooter's motivation? We don't know. There's obviously the theory that he was hired or whatever, used, or that basically this was the kind of Middle Eastern people, you know, those white Middle Easterns. But there's also, what else can you say? Obviously there's also the primary theory, the instant assumption that he was a left-winger. And whether or not he was a left-winger, which I think he was, at least in his presentation, he seemed very left-wing, unless there was like a ulterior motive, unless it was a facade. But in his presentation, with like the memes and stuff, he seemed very left-wing. Even though a lot of people like to say that means he's probably a groiper, you know, a massive right-winger, which I'd say, I think that's gaslighting. I think that's ridiculous. Just because he's got memes like making fun of him for being gay. Now, that's like traditional, like left-wing kind of topsy-turviness, you know. That's like, of course, left-wingers can mock other people for, even though they respect gayness, they defend gayness, they can still mock you because they assume that it's part of your shadow. They assume that you'd be insecure about being called it, so they put that on you, you know. So that's not out of the question. That the idea that he must be, that he can't be left wing because he's using the word gay as an insult. It's a joke, you know. Not all left wingers are like, oh, gay, you know. So there we go. But yeah, I think he was probably a boy who was raised by a conservative family. He went to university in America. When he went to university, he could have been anywhere in the West, and he just became quite radical left. But anyway, let's not think too deep into that because we don't really know yet. But yeah, there's no point. And also, that's one individual, you know, who pulled the trigger. There could be a whole kind of syndicate behind him, but you know, look at who's celebrated. You know, that kind of shows you. That shows you who was at heart behind his death. You know, doesn't mean that they're responsible for the action, but they take responsibility for the kind of sentiment, don't they? You know, they celebrate his death. You know, I know exactly where they're coming from. You know, they don't believe in God. They don't believe. They kind of believe, but they don't, in principle, believe in the sanctity of life. Now, don't get me wrong. The right, in principle, kind of believe in the sanctity of life, but you don't necessarily see that in their actions. Look at the Gazans, right? A lot of them, they just turn off their hearts, don't they? As I can fall into the trap of doing that too, but which is awful. But anyway, I just want to say, anyway, yeah, the left don't really seem to hold life necessarily sacred because they don't really believe in God. They're postmodern, and they all believe, it seems like, unless you're a good person or you're inclusive or whatever, you know, then otherwise you're a piece of poo, you know. So yeah. So that, yeah, they kind of saw him as an obstacle, and they were like, you know, you got to crack some eggs, you know. So, and then you got Charlie Kirk on the other side saying you got to crack some eggs to have kind of the Second Amendment right, you know, the so-called right, you know, which is upheld, which is like sacred to the whole American project, you know. So, hello, how you doing? Yeah. Neighbor. So yeah. Yeah. It's a mess we're in. Yeah. To be continued.